Morning. Everybody all right? Nice to be together. My name's Joel. Got a question for you as we get started. We're doing just a really important question, and you've probably heard this a bajillion times in your life. Just want to know, how you doing? How you doing, huh? Come on. How are you doing, Right? Just take a moment. Maybe just think, just pause for just a second and think about, what have you felt or experienced already today? I don't know, maybe you're one of those families that had a bit of a squabble on the way in. I'm not saying anything about that. You make your own conclusions. No. Maybe you felt a bit frustrated this morning. Maybe you felt really tired. Maybe you're really excited. Maybe you're bored. Don't answer that. I've only just started, please. No. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is your first time here and you're feeling a bit anxious. You're feeling a bit like, I'm not really sure what to expect. Will someone talk to me? Will someone talk to me too much? I don't know. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Maybe you're watching online and you're just kind of like, I'm not really sure what to expect. Or maybe I'm not here in person because I'm just not feeling well. How are we feeling? What are we doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And we don't always take a moment to reflect on that. So we're doing a series on emotions, and so it's a good place to start, right? Thinking about that. With emotions, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. We talked how emotions can be low, they can be high, they can be sort of mild, they can be really strong and powerful. They can be so strong. Fear can be so strong that it actually holds you back from doing anything. It can hold you back. Envy can be so powerful that it removes all of your ability to enjoy life, and it causes you to think just about yourself. Anger can be so strong that you hurt yourself or you hurt others. It has just chaos and damage in its wake, and sadness can be so crushing that life itself becomes something that becomes unbearable. Emotions can be really, really, really strong and incredibly powerful. And the issue is not that we have emotions. In fact, there's nothing wrong with emotions. There's nothing wrong entirely with. We should have emotions. If we don't have emotions, it's usually either a medical condition, or it could be a side effect of development or a side effect of medication. If you don't have emotions, that's actually more of a condition. So emotions in and of themselves are not actually wrong at all. It's actually how we use our emotions, isn't it? It's actually when emotions become so strong that they control our lives that it becomes the issue. And we've been using this phrase in our series, like, emotions should color our lives rather than control our lives. And that's what we're looking at. And this affects all of us. You could be young, you can be old, you can be single, married, divorced, widowed, doesn't matter, separated. You could be educated, uneducated, wealthy, dirt poor. It doesn't make a difference, actually. And you don't even have to be a follower of Jesus to understand what we're talking about. Because emotions is a human thing. It's a humankind thing. It affects all of us. And you can't help having emotions, but I believe, as followers of Jesus, I believe we can help one another with our emotions. I believe we can do that. And that's why we're doing this whole series this month. We're taking 4 big areas, 4 big topics. We've looked at fear. Last week, Christopher looked at fear, sadness, envy, and anger. We're taking just 4 sort of big topics and just looking at those 4 different areas. And today I've got the the topic of sadness. And I just have to say at the offset, I mean, that's such a huge topic, isn't it? I mean, how do you, like, in a short time try to communicate? So hopefully what we talk about is going to be helpful, but you also understand the tension. Of course, how do you do it in a short amount of time? It's such a big issue, a big thing. And I've got just a little illustration, and you know this already because for all of us who've experienced sadness, and they look at this, they describe it this way, like as a rope. And with sadness, at one end, you can just have, like, you just feel a bit blah. You know, on one end, you might feel just a little bit low, a little bit blah, could be just a bit tired, you know. And then all the way on the other end of the same exact rope, you could feel like you're at the end of everything, and you'd rather that everything ends. You can feel so desperate that life itself is no longer even worth experiencing. But it's the same rope, it's the same line of sadness, if you like. You know, it's the same. And sadness as an emotion has got this wide range. You know, we could be just disappointed, you know. We went to, like, somewhere and it just didn't work out the way we wanted, and it's kind of like a mild disappointment almost. There's that, like, little twinge that we kind of get over and we forget about. A couple of days ago, we forget about something that we were disappointed or upset about, just blood about a couple of days ago. But then on the other end of it, you could have a grief that is actually so deep and so raw that it feels like everything inside you is being ripped out. You can have something that you forget about a couple days later, and you can have something that just is so consuming that it's the only thing you can think about. And so sadness, you know this. I'm telling you something, you already know all this because we've all experienced sadness. You know all this. But I guess we just have to have an understanding that sadness in and of itself is a wide-ranging thing to talk about, you know. You know this. I'm not telling you something that you already know. But what I would say is, if you ever find yourself at an end where you wish it would all end, please speak to somebody. Please speak to somebody here. If you're part of a small group and you're part of one of our fused groups, speak to someone that you trust in your small group. You know, we would love to journey with you, walk with you, support with you. And if you need, you know, you could actually need medical intervention and professional support. And we'd love to walk with you and journey with you. There's no shame in that. There's no shame at all. We're here to help one another. We're here to be the body of Christ and the family of God for one another. And we have to be real with one another. And so I would ask, when you feel like it's the end, please say something. Please. And it's not easy. I don't want to make it seem like I've just given you an instruction that's just so easy to do, because come on, it's not easy. If you've ever been in that place, you know it's not easy to open up in that way. But please know this is a safe place, and we want our small groups, our fused groups, to be safe places where we don't judge you, but we surround you and care for you and look to how we can support you, because you cannot help having emotions, but I believe we can help one another with our emotions. As followers of Jesus, this is not in the notes, sorry, but as followers of Jesus, we are told to weep with those who weep. We are not told to slap those who weep. We're not told to tell those who weep off. We're told to weep with those who weep. So we just want to be the body of Christ for one another. Okay, so I hope that is clear and makes sense. And the question we're asking really today is, how do I look up when I feel so down? You know, how do we do it? And I don't know if you noticed this. You probably know this already. This is something you probably already know, because when sadness comes knocking on your door, I was kind of thinking about, like, how do we respond? What do we do with sadness? And I was thinking there's a couple of responses. And when sadness arrives and it's knocking on your door, maybe this is just me, but I find that these are our responses. The first thing we try to do, we could dodge it. We could do whatever we can to try to avoid feeling it. You know, I don't know how you do it, but we all do it because we're really more on a happiness quest in life. We really just want to make everything happy all the time and perfect. And I don't know how you avoid it, but maybe you just make yourself busy. Maybe you do something entertaining. Maybe you go out shopping. Maybe you have another drink. Maybe you use some other type of stimulant. I don't know. What do you do to avoid feeling sadness? Do you tell yourself off? Do you just fight through it? Do you pull yourself together? I don't know. You know what I mean? We all have different coping mechanisms. I think one of the more common things is we just dodge it. We try to dodge it when it comes our way. And sometimes we have to because maybe you've got to get up that morning and take care of the kids, or maybe you've got to go to work. And sometimes you do just have to pull up the bootstraps and carry on. But when you have a pattern of always dodging it because we just want everything to be happy all the time, I don't know if that's necessarily a healthy way to deal with sadness. That's just one of the responses. Maybe you don't do that. And the other response that can happen when sadness comes knocking is we just drown. We drown in it. It's like it becomes this big hole. And instead of being able to walk around it, somehow we just fall into it. And it just overwhelms, and it becomes so big, and it just shadows everything. It overshadows everything, and we want the blinds drawn, and we don't want to get out of bed, and we don't want to eat, and we don't want to see people, and we don't even want to just feel. We just get we just fall into this hole. We drown into it. And of course, I said at the beginning, this is a big topic, and those are just two sort of characterizations, generalizations of ways that we can respond to sadness. We can dodge it, or we can drown it. And I want to propose there could be a third way. There is a third way. And instead of dodging it or drowning in it, that we actually dive into it. Because when you dodge it and when you're drowning in it, in both of those scenarios, sadness is the emotion controlling our lives. Because it's determining how I behave, how I react, how I respond. Sadness is controlling the situation. But instead of sadness controlling the situation, what if you did? What if you dove into it? What if sadness could teach us something? What if sadness could teach us something about the way we're made as human beings? What if sadness could even teach us something about God? What if we dive into the sadness and ask ourselves some honest questions and wrestle with some honest answers? And there's a guy who did this. You might have heard about him. There's this boy. His name was David. He's kind of famous because he killed a giant. And he also became the king of Israel. So he's a famous Bible character, this little boy David, and he was a shepherd. You might have heard this story. If you haven't heard it, it's pretty crazy. This little boy's a shepherd. He goes to the battlefield to see his older brothers. He's going to bring his brothers some food. There's a big, nasty, ugly, hairy giant making everybody feel frightened. And then David somehow ends up being the one to go out on the battlefield. This little shepherd boy, not a soldier, has a sling, and he has a sling with a stone, hits the giant in the head and kills the giant, and little shepherd boy becomes the hero and upstages the whole thing. That's David. And this guy David wrote a lot of songs. And we actually have, in the Bible, is a collection of books. One of the books is called Psalms, and Psalms are like loads of his songs, loads of the things that he wrote. And he wrote a really honest question, and I want us to take this one simple, honest question as we begin to dive into sadness. And it says this in Psalms 43. He just says this question. He says, "Why are you so down, O my soul? Why so down, O my soul?" See, he doesn't avoid it. He doesn't try to dodge it. He doesn't pretend it's not happening. He doesn't pretend he's not feeling anything. He doesn't tell himself off for having these feelings, having these emotions. He actually dives into it, and he says, "Why so down, oh my soul?" He kind of goes straight for it. Why? He takes control of the situation rather than it taking control of him. And I guess the first simple answer, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, was this: I'm feeling sad because I've been made with the ability to feel sad. Why am I down? Because that's how I've been made. Actually, the first thing is I can feel downcast because I've been made to feel down. I'm wired this way. That's the first, right? That's the first thing. The first answer to that question is, why am I so down? Well, heck, I guess because I can feel that way, because I'm made that way. That's the first thing, right? I mean, I'm making it sound simple. It's not super simple, but you know what I mean. You were created to be able to feel sadness. We're wired in such a way. And if you're wired in such a way, I guess the first thing you need to understand as you get ready to dive into it is that it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to feel down. It's okay. It's actually not wrong. That's, you know, I don't know your experience. I don't know your upbringing. I don't know what kind of environment or religious setting or home setting you had. Maybe you weren't made to know that it's okay to have emotions, and maybe you weren't brought up in such a way that told you that having emotions is not wrong. The first thing as you dive into it, the first answer to that question is, why am I so down? Is because I've been created this way, and it's okay to have these emotions. You see? It's okay. Because it's okay to feel angry, it's not okay to punch your sister. Right? It's okay to be upset at something, but it's not okay to hurt others in the process. Hurt yourself in the process, right? You see, if what we do with the emotions in and of themselves are not wrong, it's what we do with the emotions. Emotions should color our lives, not control our lives. So as he begins to dig deeper, he dives into this question, why so downcast? And we know he goes deeper because he goes into something that's under the surface. He goes, why so downcast, oh my soul? Why so downcast, oh my soul? It's something that's going on the inside. You know, it just reaches into what's really going on. How you doing? How you doing? Really doing? He asks a probing question, and Christopher said last week, you know, that the answer to that question is universally, oh, I'm fine. But if we ask honest questions and if we give honest answers, then we're actually going to grow. We will begin to grow in life if we give honest answers to honest questions, right? And I think, you know, if you ask that question, why so downcast, oh my soul, what's going on? Sometimes the answer is really easy to find. It is really easy. Sometimes it's super easy because there's something that's happened in our lives that we know exactly why we're feeling down. We know exactly why we're feeling down. Sometimes there's there's an answer. You know, maybe, I don't know, obviously maybe there's been a loss in the family, maybe there's been a breakdown of a relationship, and you actually know exactly why you're feeling so down. Other times it can be more ambiguous, can't it? It can be harder to figure out why we're feeling this way, but sometimes it's actually we know the answer. We actually can know, as we dive into it, we know exactly why we're feeling down and why we're feeling sad because of a certain event or a certain thing that's taken place. We know what's going on. But as we dive into it and wrestle with it and begin to ask what's going on, I'm going to warn you now because it can be a bit uncomfortable. Because remember, we usually like to dodge it. We don't really like to deal with it. But when we dive into it, all of a sudden we have to take control. We can't be the victim anymore. We have to take control of what's going on. Even though it feels so strong and powerful, we take the reins. And it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. It's not always easy. That's why we need community. And that's why I say we can't help having emotions, but I believe we can help each other with our emotions. And let's just create a scenario to try to give an example. Let's say you ask that question, why am I so down? What's going on? And then I know exactly why, because I had a relationship that broke. You know, I didn't expect for the relationship to not work out. Of course I'm upset. You know, I really hoped that they might be the one. I really hoped I was sort of looking forward to the future, and now I'm not looking forward to the future. I was really hoping that this could be something, you know? And it's not what I hoped, it's not what I thought, it's not what I wanted it to be. But this is where we dive in and we have to ask the deeper question, and why is it bothering me so much? Why is it upsetting me so much? And when I dive into that, I begin to realize it's because I don't really want to be alone in life, and I'm worried now that I'll be alone, or I'm worried now that no one's going to want me, or no one is going to really love me or notice me or want me the way that I want to be wanted. And I was hoping it would be something, but now it's not something. And if I really dive into it, and if I really dive deeper, the reason I'm so upset is because I'm worried about just being on my own or being rejected. And face it, dive into it. Or maybe, there's friendship circles, and I really hoped these friendships would work out, but somehow they didn't work out. And of course, that's why I'm upset. I'm upset because the friendships didn't work out the way I wanted them to. But I keep diving into it, and I'm upset that it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, maybe because I just know that what happened was wrong. Maybe you were mistreated or bullied or something, maybe that's not right, that's wrong. Of course it should feel upsetting. You were mistreated. But as you dive into it deeper, you begin to realize, I just want to be accepted. I just want to feel like I'm part of something. I don't want to feel like I'm on the outside. I want to be part of something. You see, if we dive into it, if we ask honest questions, and if we're prepared to give honest answers to honest questions, I think it will help us. Because there's nothing wrong with the emotion. Sadness in and of itself is a brilliant thing. It's actually a really good thing, because sadness becomes a mirror to my soul. Sadness becomes that thing that I can hold up, and I can look at myself and I can say, why am I so down, oh my soul? It becomes a mirror to show us what's going on. It becomes the reflection to help us. So it's not something that we need to run away from. Actually, it's something that we can learn from. We can dive, into it. And then David carries on in the line of his song. He says, "Why so downcast, O my soul? Place or put your trust, put your hope in God. I will once again be able to praise." He dives into it. And the next thing, after you sort of go in, it's like, where am I going to put my trust? Where am I going to put my hope? Where am I going to put my longing for the future? Because sadness usually reminds us that something didn't work out the way we wanted it to. Usually. Relationships, jobs, whatever scenario, you didn't get that car you wanted, your football team didn't win the way you wanted them to, whatever it is, something didn't happen the way you wanted it to. And sadness usually has to do with something that didn't work out the way you'd hoped, the way you'd wanted, the way you wanted to be, the way you wanted things to happen, the way you wanted relationships or friendships or jobs, whatever, to work out. So what are you going to do with your hope? Where do you put your hope or your trust or your longing for the future? Where does that go? Why so downcast, O my soul, David writes. Place your trust in God. And, okay, let's be totally honest. Not that we haven't been already, but let's be totally honest. Okay, that sounds like a super simple thing to do, but it is absolutely very difficult. Right? That's not an easy thing to do, is it? Right? Okay, let's be super, super honest, especially if you don't think that God is worth putting your trust in, because in fact you sort of blame him. Because when you dive into your sadness and when you dive into your sorrow, the thing is, where were you, God, when I needed you? Why didn't you do this healing? Why didn't you do this miracle? Why didn't you help this person who needed this help? How in the world can you let this situation happen, God? So why would I even trust in you, God? Because you were the one who screwed it up in the first place, because you weren't there to be fixing it, and you could have fixed it. And all of a sudden I'm giving honest answers to honest questions, because the thing that's really bothering me is because I don't have any hope or trust for the future, because I can't even trust in you anymore anyway, if you can't fix something like this. And we want to blame things, David writes one line, and as if it's such an easy line from a song to sing, but when you dive into it, you begin to realize, wow, place your hope place your trust in God? It's not always easy, is it? Am I the only one that thinks sometimes it's not always easy? It's not always easy. So I encourage you as well not to think all of a sudden he's just reading off this one line of a song as if it's just snap your fingers, click, everything fixes itself and it works out so perfectly. I'm not saying that. What we're doing is looking at how we can manage our emotions rather than our emotions managing us. We're looking at how we can learn to be in control rather than them controlling us. So we dive into it. And when you're feeling down, it's really hard to have hope. And when you feel mistreated, it's hard to have trust. Isn't it? Well, it is, And it's not easy to cast your cares, to move them onto something else, to then put our longing into something else. Peter writes in 1 Peter, he says, cast your cares on me, cast your cares on God, for he cares about you. There's the same word there, that cast, that place, that put. And imagine it more like this, you've got maybe a young baby, an infant in your arms. And to take that infant and actually put it somewhere and trust that the other person will hold that baby is a big deal. This is what you're doing. When you give God your trust and your hope, it's not just well, that was easy. I didn't want to hold that phone anyway. It's better on there. It's more like taking something precious and personal and intimate and letting somebody else hold it. Really? That's really trust, isn't it? If you're a parent, you know that when somebody came to hold your baby for the first time and you're like, I'm not sure about this. Unless you were like, yes, please, take it. Finally! Right, I'll see you in a few days. No, anyway. So, trust isn't always easy. Hope isn't always easy. It's not. If you've ever been on this journey, you know exactly what I'm talking about, if you've ever been on this journey. And this line is so challenging because most of us, we want to put our hope into either a new relationship or a hope into a new job, a hope into a new situation. We want to put our hope into something else that we could, if only I had this, it would fix everything. If only I found that person, he or she would fix everything. If only I had this job, it would just fix everything. As if those things would all of a sudden deal with the issues of what's really going on in our soul. We put our hope into, if only I could go on this course, if only I could read this self-help book, if only I could understand a bit more. We put our hope into these things. And David's challenging us to put our hope into something different than just those kind of things. I put my hope in the politics. I put my hope in the economics. I put my hope in my investments. I don't know where you put your hope. David's saying, put our hope in God. I'll put my hope, my trust in God. And then this simple line is just so encouraging. I love this. I just love this verse. Not only is it not easy, it's not yet. What a totally honest verse from the Bible. Why so downcast, O my soul? Put your trust, put your hope in God. One day I will again be able to praise. I will again praise. I will again rejoice. I will again smile. I will get over it. It's not the end of the rope. It's not over. I will. Just not yet. It's such an honest prayer. Why are you so down, oh my soul? Trust in God. I will yet praise. I will one day be able to be at peace. I will one day sing. I will one day rejoice. How honest that he doesn't say, snap out of it, you stupid fool. Come on, pull yourself together. Just get over it. No, you've done it. You've said a prayer. Everything's fine now. Okay, Jesus. Okay, yeah, go. Right. Oh, how cool. I just think that's such If you've not read the Bible and realized how honest it is, this is one of the most incredible, encouraging things about the Christian faith. It is so honest. It's so brutally honest. One day, I'll be able to praise. How encouraging that you're not expected to have to do that today. It isn't assuming that you've just got it all figured out. It isn't assuming that everything's just going to be so perfect. Everything's going to be roses and rainbows and a nice little tidy box bow life. It's not assuming that. It's not assuming that now that you've figured out what's bothering you, that all of a sudden tomorrow everything's going to be wonderful. It's not assuming that. One day I will be able to praise. Which then asks me the question, how do I know I can trust in Jesus? How is Jesus even trustworthy or worthy of our trust? For me, it's because I believe Jesus understands. More than anything, Jesus understands what we're going through. See, the Christian faith is the one where the Creator becomes like His creation. Other faiths don't have that outlook. Sometimes the gods came down in mythology to see what it was like amongst the humans. But it was a plaything, it was a game, it was just a sport, it was an activity. And they could go when they needed to. Or it was a curse. The gods were all of a sudden cursed and became like humans. They were stuck on this earth because of something they had done up in the heavenlies, right? The stories in mythology. But the Christian faith is totally different. The Christian faith is the one where the Creator becomes entirely like His creation. So much so that He starts at the very beginning. He starts inside a woman's womb, the same place that we all started. He starts as a totally dependent human. The Christian faith, like I said before, is the most honest faith in the world. It's so honest. The Creator humbles Himself to be like one of us. To be like one of us. In fact, it's so crazy. Jesus is described like this. And there's this verse in Isaiah, and it says that He was despised. He was hated. People looked down on Him. They thought He was rubbish. He was rejected by humankind. He's described as a man of sorrows, one acquainted with grief. The word there, acquainted, means to intimately know. It's not just like a friend or a follower on your socials. You've got like 1,200 friends on your social media platform. And whatever, they're called friends, but they're not really friends, right? The word there, acquainted with grief, means to know intimately and personally. Jesus is described as a man of sorrows who personally knows grief. See, the Christian faith isn't one that thinks that the gods stepped down into creation as a plaything. Surrendered Himself into humanity because He loved humanity. It wasn't a game for Jesus. He steps into it. And as fully human, we read these episodes. There's two examples. There's this one example when Jesus is at the funeral of a friend, and he's weeping. And he's weeping so much that people say, you can see how much he loved his friend. He's like slobbery, snotty tears, Deep sorrow, deep weeping at grief. Because, come on, guys, grief is horrible. Loss is horrible. Even though he knew it was going to work out, he's still bawling his heart out. Come on, grief is horrible. There's another time he's coming to the city of Jerusalem, and it says he sees the city and he weeps over the city. Have you ever wept over a city? I haven't, okay? Yeah, I just imagine feeling sorrow so much that you weep over an entire city. And not your favorite city, not the city that's ready to say, woohoo, Jesus, we love you. The city that's going to say, Jesus, we hate you and we're going to kill you. You set foot in our door and we will slap you silly. That's what happened. That's the Jerusalem he wept over, because I said, my heart longed to pull you together like a mother hen. And he weeps. Okay, he felt emotion deeper than I have ever felt it. I have never wept over that. I've only wept over myself. Maybe I feel sad when those closest to me struggle. I've never wept over a city full of strangers who hate me. Jesus, the man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, okay, he did not avoid, he did not dodge dealing with emotions. He felt emotions fully. You know, he does not avoid pain and suffering. And this is recorded. Who recorded it? It's firsthand eyewitnesses who were there on the day with him, writing about the Savior of the world with this type of language. There is even a time when he was weeping and begging and in so much sorrow and anguish that his tears were like blood. I have never cried that hard in my life. I've had some pretty rubbish situations. I'm sure we all have, but I ain't ever cried blood. I just haven't. I've never felt it that strongly. And there's a time when it's also recorded and he's hanging on the cross and he cries out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" Which is another line from a song that David wrote. The rest of it, which goes, "I have been crying out day and night, and you're not even answering me." Isn't that an honest answer to an honest question? Why so downcast, O my soul, because I feel so forsaken? Jesus did not avoid emotions. So having emotions in and of themselves are totally fine. It's what we do with these emotions. Yeah. Jesus came near. We don't believe in a God who stays distant. We believe in a God who came near. He doesn't avoid pain. He doesn't avoid suffering. He doesn't avoid mess. He doesn't avoid heartache. He doesn't avoid tragedy. He dives in. He dives in straight into whatever is going on in our lives. And you might not be a follower of Jesus. I get that. You might not even believe the whole story of Jesus. But I can tell you again, following Jesus, the Christian faith is the most honest belief system in the world. Because the Christian faith is not a naive fairy tale telling you that, oh, everything's just so wonderful and perfect and everything's a tidy box with a bow on top. You know, the Christian faith faces life in all of its reality. It doesn't sugarcoat it. It faces it. It doesn't just brush over it and candy coat everything. It actually faces it. It faces it. It's the one at its Christian faith is the one that at its core, it has all of our belief is placed on the one who wades into all of our sin, all of our brokenness, all of our junk. That's the core belief of the Christian faith. One who went straight in. Straight in. And he doesn't observe at a distance. And therefore, I can place my trust in God. I can place my trust in Jesus because one, I know he understands. And two, sadness reminds me I am not alone because there is one who has suffered as well. There is one who has suffered and struggled as well. Sadness reminds me I'm not alone. And if you've ever felt at the end of your rope, and you know what I'm talking about, because when you're in that place, you actually feel the most alone in the world. And in that dark, deep place, that's where we let sadness remind us I am not alone, because there is one who has waded into this place with me. And we're not slapped and told, get yourself together, you silly little, come on. Who wades in and weeps with those who weep. Wades in. Sadness reminds us that we are not alone. I can feel sad because I've been made this way. I've been designed to feel sadness. I should feel sadness. We should all feel sadness at times. And there's one that knows what we're feeling. And therefore, we can trust him. And so as we wrap up this morning, we're going to actually do communion together. The word communion, I don't know if you know, the word communion just means to share something intimate and personal. That's what communion means. Sharing something intimate and personal, especially your thoughts or your feelings. And before Jesus died, we have these first-hand accounts. They wrote down what happened, these biographies of these guys who were friends of Jesus. They wrote down what happened, and they write about this meal they have together, and this last meal that they have together. And before Jesus died, he shared a meal with them. He shared something personal. He shared something intimate. He shared something with his closest friends, and they were in a room together, and he took some bread, and it's just simple bread, and he takes this bread and he breaks it, and he says, it's like my body. It's going to be ripped, broken, torn for you. And he takes some wine, and he pours this wine in a cup, and he said, this wine, it's like my blood. He's giving them a visual illustration. This wine is like my blood, and as I'm pouring it out, you can see that's like what my life is going to be like for you. My blood is going to be poured out for you, just in the same way. The guys are like, okay, this is kind of weird. Okay, this is before anything's happened, okay? If you were there, you'd be thinking, yeah, okay, weirdo. It's kind of a weird thing, right? They don't know what's going on. That's okay. And pretty soon after this meal, Jesus is betrayed and then arrested and tortured and beaten, stripped, and then hung up, nailed to a cross, dying. They probably then begin to put two and two together. Oh yeah, just like he took that bread and tore it open and handed it out to us. Just like that blood was poured and washing down. All of a sudden, you begin to understand a bit more about what he might have been talking about. All of a sudden, what before was just a weird meal or a weird moment around at somebody's house, all of a sudden became precious. It became communion. It was sharing something personal and intimate. Jesus was sharing something with them, and they didn't even realize what he was sharing with them. The communion reminds us that Jesus knows suffering firsthand. He knows it. He knows it. He's acquainted with grief. He's acquainted with sorrows. And you might be here this morning and, you wouldn't call yourself a follower of Jesus. You wouldn't, and now you're sort of thinking, well, this morning's gone kind of weird because now they're talking about, like, blood and vampire stuff, right? Oh, this is kind of weird. I'm not coming back here. But what we're doing is something deeper, something which is communion, something which is sharing something personal and intimate. It's deeper than just catching up and asking people how the football went over the weekend or how they're doing. It's actually something that steps a little bit deeper, wades in just a little bit, because we get to share the pain of life. We remember what our Savior did for us. We're sharing something. And you might be thinking, hey, I'm not a follower of Jesus yet, so I don't really think that's for me. I'm not really been invited to this party. And maybe over the years you've been made to feel like your idea of how you discover who Jesus is that you somehow have to tidy up first, you have to become better before you're invited. Maybe you got to prove yourself or perform before you become invited. And I don't know if maybe that's been your experience. But that's not how Jesus worked. That's not how Jesus works. We're invited before we cleaned up. He welcomes us before we're fixed. He calls us before we've been able to perform and prove ourselves. He calls us before we can, smarten our dress or whatever. And he invites us with our confusion and our offenses. He invites us with our aches and our sorrows because he's one who knows it. And I can tell you this with confidence because the first time Jesus had this meal with his followers, they did not know what was going on. In fact, one of them, just after the meal, betrayed him. Just before the meal, they'd all been arguing amongst themselves. It's all recorded in the Bible. They'd all been arguing. Judas goes out and betrays him. Peter later on denies ever knowing him. And all the disciples scarpered, all of his close friends left him in the end. They did not understand what was going on, nor would you say they're very good followers of Jesus if actually when it hits the fan, everybody ran. So I know that the invitation isn't about you making sure you're ready. The invitation is about Jesus saying, this is who I am. This is what I have done for you. And maybe you don't feel like you're a follower of Jesus. You are not excluded. Do you know why you're not excluded? Because Jesus came to give his life for all. And there's nothing magical, there's nothing special. That bread is from Tesco, and that's a bit of Ribena. But when we dive in, it reminds us of something else. It represents something. It represents the one who shares our pain firsthand. The one that wants to share life with you. And whatever your emotions are, whatever you're experiencing, there is one who wants to share it with you. The bread represents and reminds us that our real body, who really lived, died for us. The Ribena, the juice, the wine, the Ribena reminds us that there was blood that was poured out. It cost somebody something. This is what it means, that it was painful. It represents the love of the one who's willing to go to any length to reach your heart, even though it costs him his life. The Christian faith runs straight into sadness and tragedy. We don't dodge it, and we don't get drowned in it. We dive into it. David wrote this. He said, if I go to the depths, you are there. Even if I make my bed in the grave, I will find you there. Paul writes in his book called Romans, he said, you cannot get away from the love of God. If you go to the highest of the heights or the lowest of the lows, if you go to the depths, you can't escape it. Life, death can't even separate you from the love of God. We serve a God who stepped into the blood, sweat, and tears of life. That's what communion reminds us. He experienced everything this world has to offer. And he came only to offer love, hope, and healing, and he was totally mistreated and totally misunderstood, but it didn't stop him offering and giving of himself in spite of everyone not even understanding or realizing what he was doing. The best person in the world was treated the worst possible way. We do not serve a distant God. We serve a weeping, bloody, heartbroken God who wades into whatever deep and dark places we find ourselves. And that's why I can say with confidence, sadness reminds me that I am never alone. I might feel alone, but I am not alone. And then that's why David can say, in spite of this, I can put my trust in God. And it might not be today, and it might not be tomorrow, and it might not be next week, and it might not be next year. But one day, there is a day coming when I will praise again. There's a day coming when I will be able to breathe freer, smile better. There will be a day. There will be a day. It will happen. It will happen. And all of a sudden we learn that it doesn't have to control our lives anymore. Because we will, even if we're in the midst of it, we will one day praise again. We are not alone, and we can trust the one who is with us. It's so encouraging, isn't it? So we're going to pray now. We're going to close. We've got a worship song that's going to come on. It's got the lyrics on. And feel free, in your own timing, just come forward. We've got some gluten-free bread on the little white baskets, little bowls. Come forward on your own time. If maybe this is the first time you've done it, Doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong way. You're just invited to share and participate in the meal. So we go ahead and start that song, and I'll just close in prayer if that's all right, guys, please. Thank you. Yeah, Jesus, thank you so much that you made us with emotions. You've given us emotions. We thank you for that. And we just pray for everyone here this morning, God, if we're in a place which feels dark or deep or heavy, God, you can remind us we're not alone. In our sadness, you can actually use that to teach us that you are here with us. And it reminds us of the one who suffered so much. And help us when we feel at the end of ourselves to put our trust in you. Lord, thank you that you offered yourself. You shared something so personal and intimate as your life. You broke your body. You poured out your blood for us. And you wanted us to remember. You wanted us to remember what you did. And you gave us something so simple as some bread and some juice to remind ourselves. God, and as we just share communion together, we share personal lives together, we thank you that you're with us. In your name we pray. Amen. Feel free to just come forward on your own timing. And thank you.
Speak life, give peace in the unknown, and hold me when I'm barely hanging on. I believe that hope will dawn. Remind my heart I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Even on the coldest night, there is still a warmth inside. I can see the light breaking through. I can see the light breaking through. And even in the shadow times, you don't ever run and hide. I can see the light breaking through. I can feel the light breaking through. Jesus, you're redeeming all things. Light is breaking through. Eyes are fading, lost in mercy. Light is breaking through. The weight is lifting, finally breathing. Light is breaking through. Illuminated by your splendor, light is breaking through. Even on the coldest night, there is still a warmth inside. I can see the light breaking through. I can see the light breaking through. Even in the shadow times, you don't ever run and hide. I can see the light breaking through. I can feel the light breaking through.
Just as we wrap up, if you want to chat to anybody, want anyone to pray with you, if you're in a small group or fused group, if you want to do that in that setting, that's totally fine. If you want to speak to one of us this morning, I'd be more than happy to chat to you just over here on the side. If this has raised or made you think anything or wondered some different things this morning, if you have any questions, I'd love to just spend some time chatting to you if you'd like to. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the day. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Next week, we're going to be looking at anger. So bring your best Hulk smash stuff, and we will move on to the topic of anger. I know Sam is sharing next week. So really excited about that. Have an amazing rest of the day. You don't have to rush off. Kiddos are still fine till at least 12, so you've got a few more minutes now if you want to grab another drink or just have a little bit of time to speak to somebody, or, as I said, just come see us on the side. Awesome. Thank you.